All right, everybody. So, as you're thinking about this, I want you to ask yourself, have you ever had a feature request that came at you like a demand? I know that I have. Even when I was the VP of product for a startup reporting to the CEO, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. But if you have or you haven't, put a yes or no in the chat, and we will then be considering some of those as we go forward too. All right, so let me tell you a little about that story then. So when I was the VP of product, I was it's about maybe 13 years ago. So I was in my late 20s and I was in my office and I was talking to my CEO. He came into my office often with new ideas and he started telling me about this idea. And then at one point he tells me, Brennan, are you listening to me? And really, I kind of half was and I half wasn't listening at the time because I was concerned with everything that he was telling me. Is this a good idea? Is this something we can get done? What are we going to have to move off the roadmap? What are we going to have to be able to fit in? What are my engineers going to think? What are my product managers going to think? Because I have five different product teams at the time, and they're all coming to me also saying, "Hey, can you stop the roadmap whiplash that we're experiencing?" We're constantly getting new ideas from the CEO, who was an ideas guy. So you see, he would come into my office almost every day. Before I even got my coffee and was caffeinated, he would have 10 new ideas. And it was great that he was charismatic, a visionary with all kinds of different things. But when we're thinking about making practical decisions with limited capacity, I couldn't say yes to everything. But at the same time, it just wasn't really working to where I could say no. I mean, I'm a vice president of product. I'm the head of product in the whole organization. He brought me in to figure out how we can navigate the market with a new product idea and how to build a business around it. And yet, I still felt like I didn't have any really authority in how what went on in the roadmap. It was constantly just things being inserted here at that time. And so I learned from a lot of mistakes that there are two different options at the time that I thought. I thought there were two options. The first one is to push back, right? Everybody tells you you need to be the one that says no more often than anybody else. And that sounds good and true until you actually get in the situation with a real stakeholder with authority. Maybe it's your boss, right? Are you going to tell your boss no every time? Right? Are you the gatekeeper of everything that goes into your product roadmap? I mean, you might come across that way in the literature that you read, but in reality, you come across as defensive when you're argumentative. And then they leave saying, I can't rely on you. I can't trust you anymore to get things done. Because we built up our reputations before on delivery excellence. And now what we're doing is we're showing that we can't even be trusted to just get things done. So what's the other option? Is it to then just give in because you get this from the CEO, right? It's his company. He's the owner of it as well. Maybe you just cave or you're getting tired of all of the things coming in and you say, you know what? I'm just going to let the business decide. I'm going to let them decide. Here, I'm going to just put it up and just say, hey, my job is to just get stuff done. And now with AI, maybe that's a little bit easier to do. But you also lose something when you're going through that route. You lose credibility because they leave their office. Yes, they might have gotten their pet idea done because you said, yes, we'll put it onto the roadmap and move forward. But they see themselves as saying, hey, this is another day that I have to play the role of product manager again. So both situations end up being bad for you. You don't want either of them, but there is a third way through to where you don't have to give in or push back. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, why don't we just put our heads down and just do the work because that's what we were hired to do? And the thing is, we're not afraid of hard work. No, this job is very difficult. We're not afraid of that. That we wouldn't be in this role if we were. We're actually afraid of meaningless work. And that applies to not just us, but also our teams. Our teams, when they don't have context for what they're building, their morale goes down. They go from missionary to mercenary, right? They're just paid to get a paycheck and just ship things and move on. And if anybody's fault that it didn't go well, it's the person that gave me the requirements, right? You start blaming other people for low quality, low impact, and really just a feeling of blah when you're at your company. And so what you can do is not only get context in these situations for yourself so that you have more meaning in your work, it also helps build up your team's morale at the same time. So what we're going to be talking about is how can you get the context you need from these stakeholders to make better decisions and also understand why are we even doing this thing? Let's say it does get forced upon you. We still want to know why. What's the purpose? And how can we even make it better for the persona, the customer that we're trying to build for? So we'll get that context, but without losing the relationship equity that we've been burning through the other two scenarios. So what we're going to be doing is talking about three different moves. How do we get that context in three ways? And we're going to call this stakeholder judo. So just like in judo, we're not fighting the move that comes at us. If you're familiar with that martial art, the idea is that you use your opponent's energy to your advantage where you can. And so what we're going to be doing is similar. We're going to take the energy that they bring into the room. So in my case, it was literally somebody walking into the room with a lot of energy and enthusiasm. In the remote world, you also get people with some sort of enthusiasm. They take the energy and time to send you an email. They submit something to your intake form, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend as well. Or they set it up in a meeting and they're grandstanding around something. So there's some energy already there, some enthusiasm why they brought that in. We're going to use that to our advantage. The first move is to get curious. We're going to absorb this request instead of just blocking it or caving into it, right? So we're not going to use the first two situations of saying no or just giving in. We're going to figure out how can we take that energy, continue on, and we're going to use that energy by applying curiosity to it. Then we're going to reframe that back towards them. So we're going to say their idea back to them so that they feel understood and they want to continue working with us, right? It continues the relationship there. And then lastly, we want to also point to a different destination, right? We don't want this to land on us without any context. So we may have something on our roadmap that could actually solve that problem better, but we can't just immediately say, no, we have already got that covered. We're already doing this thing. And that's often the temptation. We want to show we've got it all together. We already have all the answers. So we say, oh, yeah, we're already doing that, but we're doing it this way. Well, they don't feel great about that necessarily. They might feel okay in that, yeah, okay, it is being addressed, but it wasn't my idea anymore. Remember, these people come in with a pride of authorship. So how can we still keep their pride high, but at the same time maybe point to a better solution that our engineers and designers and everybody else has also researched that way? So we're going to go through these three steps and talk about how you can keep that relationship high with those stakeholders while also getting what you need to make better decisions. All right. So imagine you got your stakeholders coming in with a new shiny object. And typically there goes our passion for product. As soon as that comes in, the shiny object syndrome. But what we have to reflect on and realize is that stakeholders, whoever they are, even our customers can be stakeholders. They're not our enemies. They're actually our advocates and amplifiers of our product and our career if we can leverage their enthusiasm well. Remember, we want to reflect that back out and help our product grow, help our careers grow as a result of it. But we have to change our mindset. We can't get defensive as soon as they walk in the room. If I start crossing my arms and being like, okay, here's another one, then immediately it changes the tone of the situation, and they're going to then force their opinion, their idea on us that way. So what we want to do instead is to choose sincere curiosity. I'm going to show you a few different questions that you can ask, but I want you to think about asking them in a different way that actually shows you're interested in the conversation. So you know the classic questions that are out there of like, well, tell me the persona. Tell me the problem you're trying to solve. Tell me, what is really underneath this. Those are some of the classic questions product managers are taught, but all these stakeholders now know that. They know our moves. They know that this is an interrogation. It's no longer a conversation. That's what like your intake form is for. Tell me the business case behind this. What's the ROI? Right? Well, people aren't going to give you information. They're going to give you the most limited answers that they can for the question that they were asked so they get through it. So what we're going to do is change the questions around. So we want to get the question of who is this for? What's the persona? But I want them to start a conversation like, oh, okay, this is pretty interesting. And I want to act that way. I want to come across as interested. Hey, can you tell me more? Can you tell me about a real name? Can you give me a real name so I can picture this person that you were talking to about this idea? One, this is a clever question in that it invokes them to tell you a story, which is what you want. Two, it validates that their idea wasn't just from their imagination. Did they actually talk to somebody in the market about this? Was it an expert or a customer or somebody from the board, like where did this originate from so that it wasn't just in their head? If they don't have one, that also gives you some information. So now you already know some of the source by getting them to just start talking with this. So we want to get the persona. Wow, tell me more. And then we want to know, well, what's happening now to that persona? So what's broken in their process? What are they missing out on right now? And it's not that they're missing out on not having the feature. So we do want to ask a question that gets to what are they missing out on in their job, in their life? So if it's a consumer facing product, what are they missing out on their life and unable to do? If it's a business B2B type of product, what is it that their company is unable to accomplish because they don't have the ability to do whatever this is? So we want to continue this conversation, and then we ask them questions about frequency. So how often does this problem occur? Weekly, monthly, and maybe we steer away from language around problems because then they might sniff us out in regards to how we're asking these questions. And they say, "Oh, wow, okay, so that sounds bad. What do they have to do instead of this today?" Because now we're figuring out what's the workaround, what's the alternative solution. And now we need to know the satisfaction with the alternative solutions to make good product judgment calls here. So what happens if they can't do this task that they're being blocked on? And we need to know how large is the market for this issue. So we ask, are there other people like this? Where else have you seen this? So if you're talking to a salesperson, they're going to come from directly from a conversation with a prospect, and they're going to say, we need this feature. And you're going to go through some of these questions, and then you might ask the question, well, where else have you seen this? And maybe they haven't seen it at other prospects, and they say, oh, well, I'm sure everybody has it. Now you can also get some information around the prevalence. If they don't have intel, then it doesn't mean that there's not evidence that there's a larger market need for this, but at least it gives you a clue one way or the other as to what you should dig into further. And then lastly, we've been talking about really the customer and their problem, but we also want to know for us selfishly, what does it unlock if we helped all of these? So yes, that salesperson might be able to land that one customer and that deal that is very large if it's an enterprise deal. Or we might be able to satisfy this one B2C customer, but what else do we get out of it? Do we think that 1,000 different consumers are going to sign up because of it? How do we know that? How much are we going to be able to get out of it? Is it the margin that we're looking for as well for our business viability? So you're going to ask these questions with sincere curiosity. I want you to picture this like you're having a conversation with a friend that you haven't seen in a few months. Oh, so tell me about what you're working on. And they mention, oh, well, I got a new job at here or whatever they're doing. Like, oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. I want you to lean in and act like there's something you can actually learn from this conversation because it's interesting. And I will tell you that every single human you talk to, old or young, any different dialect, any different industry, there's always something you can learn from someone. And that's what you're going to be doing here. Have the attitude that you're interested and there's something you could learn and not be defensive. And you're going to get a whole great set of insights from this conversation and make it a conversation, not an interrogation. All right, so now we've got the first move is choosing sincere curiosity and asking these different questions to uncover the real context, the real problem. Now we need to give it back to them. But we're going to do it in a way that's not just parroting exactly what they said to where it says, oh, you want this feature. Here's this feature back. We're going to anchor now on the problem because we're going to use this anchoring for the next step as well. So what I'm going to ask is, can I summarize what I'm hearing to make sure I got it? And without fail, everybody says yes. So that's an easy question that you can get a yes to and get permission to be able to speak back. Before, you're just asking them questions and they're speaking mostly. And so you take the answers to the questions that you just asked and you fill in this Mad Lib that says, oh, so there are this many of this persona struggling with this problem. Today, they have to do this, which costs them so much, whether that's pain or money or something or missed opportunity. But if they could automate this part of the process, this is where you take their idea and you generalize it. We'll go through why in a second. Then they could close the gap that they have and that we have at the same time. Did I get that right? And this last question also lets them correct you where you got it wrong. Because were you actually doing active listening or were you doing what I was doing at the beginning of the story, where I was worried about all the different things and not actually paying attention to what they were talking about? So you ask the question, did I get that right? meaning I don't know this as well as you do. I'm coming across with humility that I'm asking to learn from you about your situation of what you've now found out. However, what I've done here with this Mad Lib is if you look at the one, two, three, four, five, six, seven different parts, six of the seven parts are problem oriented. What I've done is I've taken a feature request and turned it into 6/7 of what I'm talking about is around a persona with a problem and an outcome. That is what we're trying to flip around without them even noticing, because we're going to use that in the next case. The other thing is, how do I disassociate the stakeholder from their pet feature idea? Everyone has pride of authorship. We do as well as product managers have pride of authorship of the ideas we come up with. How do I pull out that attachment syndrome? The way that I do it is I generalize it. So if they came up with a feature, a very specific feature involving I would talk generally about, hey, what we're going to do is help answer those questions without as much friction. That would be the feature that I would call it. I would generalize it into a category because then I'm also suggesting there might be many ways of solving that problem. So this is step number two. But we're not quite done yet with step number two. Actually, we want to ask for more. So now we've gotten what we've thought of and anchored around the problem, we're gonna say, I bet there's even more we could do to help that persona with that problem. And if we did, it can probably do, amount to this much now that we've done some quick math in our head for this business outcome. What else can we think of? And you might be thinking, Brennan, what are you doing? You got one idea that didn't fit on your roadmap already. Why are you asking for more ideas? And it's because we're continuing to disassociate that person's pride of authorship with that idea. And we're showing them that one, we get it. We're excited about it. We want to solve for it. But we also want to suggest that there's lots of minds that can all be working on this to come up with an even better solution that we might not be seeing. Because when we solve for a problem, it's actually usually layered. Usually it's not one idea that solves entirely for something. It should be like, we're going to do a little bit of this and this and this and this, and the stacking of solutions ends up creating the best experience for our customers. So what we're going to do is we're going to seed the conversation with an idea. So as they were talking about it, we're going to think of, well, what's another way I could solve here? So we could do maybe something like this. So AI, maybe we talk about workflow automation. Maybe we talk about self-service documents. Maybe we talk about, something slightly different, but say, yes, and this, yes, and that. And we do a bit of that improv to where we're pulling out more ideas and doing brainstorming. And the benefit of this is what it goes from is they came into our office to argue about getting their idea on the roadmap. And then what we've done is we moved them from me versus you to us versus the problem. So am I AI? No, I'm not. So that's funny, but no. So what we've done is now we talked to them as humans, understood something. We understand the emotion behind what they're bringing to us, and now we're getting them on our side of the table so that we can be thinking about what we could all be doing to solve this problem the best way. Okay, so the last step now that you have new ideas and a whole bunch of them, you need to now go compare them to your roadmap. But you have to have a roadmap that actually has some context on it too. Your roadmap can't just be a list of features. You need to have a roadmap that has problems, personas, customer metrics, business metrics, all of those four things on it, because otherwise you don't have a comparison method. It's now this feature versus this feature. It's somebody's opinion versus somebody else's opinion. And that's where it doesn't work out. So we need some other basis. That's why we ask those questions to gather context and be able to pull in something that we can compare to. So let's say you've got a roadmap. I like to use a visual that's kind of like hierarchical. So let's say we've got, in this case, we have financially stressed cardholders who fear late fees. That's the persona and the overarching problem that we're thinking about. What are all the possibilities and metrics and objectives that we could all help our customers with? Well, let's say that we've got the ideas that this stakeholder came in with were about, let's help our customers not miss payments anymore, because missed payments cost us money, cost them money. What if we had some AI thing that reminded them about missed payments? And what we're going to do is we're going to point to that part of the roadmap and be like, okay, great. So it sounds like the idea that you've got helps customers with missed payments. Now let's take a look at other things that we could be doing to also help them with missed payments. We have smart reminders on our roadmap today. Which one do you think is going to lead to a more effectiveness against missed payments? Do we now make a choice around the metric that we're trying to solve for versus choosing between two different features? So we point at the metric, then we say, is it this feature or is it this feature? Or maybe both of them together are going to lead to us having that success metric for our customer and then for us. So you need to first have a roadmap that has some elements of this. The features have a metric of success, which lead to a customer objective, which lead to a higher level outcome as well. So you've got to have that. And then that's when you have that conversation with the stakeholder. You have a comparison. You can do basically a live prioritization. And by doing this, the stakeholder says, okay, I got it. One, this product manager knows what's important to our customers. The second is that they already have some ideas that are already working towards helping those customers in that way. And I can see my idea that I came in with will fit in or may not fit in, but I can know that I can go back to that prospect. I can go back to that customer to saying, hey, we're solving for that problem. So they get a chance to see on their own without you having to actually tell them that their idea doesn't add up as much as something else that's already on the roadmap. Or if it does, great. You've now learned something that could be added to your roadmap and be improved upon. All right. So now think about that request or demand that you were getting before. Now what we're going to be thinking about is what's the real problem underneath it. So I'm going to remind you of a few things. First, you want to get curious about it from what they're bringing to you. Second, you want to reframe this back. And then lastly, be able to point to something better that's potentially on your roadmap too. So ask questions like, tell me more, who's this for specifically? Can I summarize what I'm hearing to make sure I've got it? And then here's where it lands against some of the other things in the roadmap. Let's talk about that as well. So that way you're going to be able to bring them into the conversation. They're going to feel like a mini product manager. You're not going to be gatekeeping. You're going to be opening it up to them, but you still then have some decision authority over this as well. They leave the office feeling good about the conversation that they were heard, and they leave your office feeling good about you because you were actually listening to them and incorporating their expertise because you asked out of curiosity and humility. All right, so if you want to learn more about how to do things like this is just like a little part of one of the modules called Stakeholder Judo that we cover in the Influential PM. So if you want to go through how to, maybe you don't have a roadmap that has all of these things on it, we go through how to actually do that. So we've got a new cohort coming up on July 27th. If you're interested, you can sign up on Maven using that link. But I want to open it up to questions now. What are some stakeholder situations that you may have been encountering, and what else do you want to dig into? You're welcome. And if you want, you can post them in any questions in the chat, or you can open up to your microphone and ask it aloud as well.
Hey, can you hear me? Is there an echo, by the way?
I can hear you. I think it's okay for right now. It is a little echo, yeah.
You're good to know that you're human.
Oh, yes. You were wondering if I was an AI avatar?
Yeah, I had to double check with that. No, I mean,
You want me to do like one of the face checks, right?
even that these days, you can never be sure, to be honest. At least on my side, yeah. But yeah, thanks for your time. I didn't catch all the points that you mentioned today. I was, trying to respond to some notes of yours. I got really intrigued with some ideas. But overall, I just want to say thanks for your time. I do see where you're sitting at, and from your experience and your work within the product space. I personally believe, touching back on some of the points that you mentioned, it's just they're great and amazing ideas from worldwide. That's for sure. I believe there are levels to that. I believe that moving forward, for products in general, it's important to actually capture great ideas, so your teams, your organizations can actually move forward, in tune with reality, in a certain sense. But yeah, I'm learning. Just want to say thanks for your time again.
Yeah, you're welcome. So thank you.
Thanks, Brennan.
All right, so we got a question from Dennis here. Most of the requests come from customers who have been using a particular product for a long time, and they do not want to miss a feature and tie them to a business process. If this feature is not part of the roadmap, what should be our approach? So you're getting a customer request, is what I understand, and they are passionate about that feature going onto the roadmap, but you have already decided at some point that doesn't fit in. It doesn't work for your market. It doesn't work for other customers. Is that what you're asking then? How to handle that tough situation where you do have to tell them no?
Yeah, that's correct, Brennan. Currently, that's what's happening. We do have, and to be honest, yeah, I like the first point where you say that, you just have to have that empathy towards the customer and ask them that question. Oh, I'm interested in your problem, but sometimes deep down you feel that feature is really not something that is worth investing our time in, right?
Hmm.
And we do feel that it's just more of like if they have a current legacy system and they would want to just copy and paste the same feature functionality into this new system rather than adjusting or adopting this new functionality, right? So that's where the challenge becomes much more tougher, and it's like day by day it's the same thing. I mean, I can't take the customer name, but it's been the same thing. They come with their existing product functionality, they want to see that here in the system, and it becomes a challenge, and they're not able to express why it is important for them.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of implications in how you answered that that I can kind of understand the situation that you're in. And it's also like, hey, some of your stakeholders that are not customers also may be thinking the same thing of like, hey, this either this competitor or this prior version has all these features in it. So therefore we're just going to port everything over in this new rebuild. This sounds kind of like what you're talking about. You're either rebuilding something that existed before in a more streamlined fashion or not, or you're trying to replace something that's a large legacy product with something new as well. I will caution you, you mentioned we feel that this feature may not be necessary in the future. Try to get some evidence of that too. So you go off of more than just feelings and your opinion, because then whose opinion matters most? Their feelings or your feelings in that case. So let me give you also a story of when I was an early product manager, I had a customer advisory board that had lots of different vocal customers that we would talk to a lot. One of them was a little bit different, and a, she was adamant that this feature would help her, that she wanted. But then when I talked to the rest of the people in our market, they didn't care so much, right? She was a specific subsegment of a persona that didn't wasn't representative of the larger market. And so I did end up having to tell her no. She was very vocal and negative about the product for a long time because it didn't have this feature. So what I did was I took her aside one-on-one, and we happened to be in person at a user conference at the time, and said, I understand this matters a lot to you. And when we've looked at it, we see that it doesn't come up as much as a situation for our other customers as well. And we really appreciate you here. But when we're thinking about our limited capacity, we really need to be considering things that are going to be applicable to the vast majority of our customer base. This is how we have to make practical ROI-based decisions. And when I talked to her about that and told her she's unique and different, she feels a little bit special, but also, it makes an understanding as to why we're not prioritizing this today. What happened was she thanked me for finally listening to her because all the previous product managers hadn't. And then she started becoming a vocal advocate for my product, for me as well, and became really positive on the board and started looking for other opportunities that fit her and fit others because she knew then how to make that argument with me as well. So you can also turn people that might want something in particular around, but it does take some tact. That is what we were talking about a lot here, that takes some practice. The first time you start asking these questions, and you're trying to have a conversation, but you have this list of questions in the back of your mind, it's going to feel awkward. It's going to come across as awkward. You're not going to get it right. But the more you do it, the more that you can then understand them as a human, you come across naturally and be able to be more persuasive of this. So, Dennis, I hope that you have an opportunity to have that kind of conversation with this customer. And it might not go well the first time, but the next time around you have another tough customer, you're going to be a little bit more adept at it now that you can listen and exhaust them of what their concerns are. And then that's it. That's a good point. Is just being able to pull out and listen from them what they care about. And then you can still make a decision, but they feel heard as well.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I appreciate it. Thank you, Karam. Good to see you as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye.
See you next time.